Most people have an image in their head of what depression looks like. Someone who can't get out of bed, who's visibly sad, withdrawn, unable to function. But depression doesn't always look like that. In fact, a lot of people who struggle with depression are still getting through their day to day life. They're going to work, they're taking care of their families, they're showing up for their commitments. On the surface, they might look like they're doing fine, but on the inside, it's a different story. And that's what we often refer to as high functioning depression. Now, high functioning depression, it's not a formal diagnosis. You won't find it listed in the DSM, but the term is widely used because it describes something that's very real and very common for people. Persistent, mild to moderate depression that doesn't stop someone from handling their responsibilities, but still leaves them feeling emotionally drained or disconnected and worn down. And the key distinction here is about functioning. Someone with high functioning depression might not meet the full criteria for a major depressive disorder, or they might not even recognize that what they're experiencing is depression because they're still managing to show up and keep going. But underneath that level of functioning, there's often a chronic emotional weight that affects every part of what's going on inside and their internal life. So let's talk about what high functioning depression looks like in reality. There are a few key signs that often show up with high functioning depression, and when we take a closer look at them, you can start to see how much they can disrupt a person's quality of life, even if they're not so obvious from the outside. The first is emotional emptiness, or a kind of low level hopelessness that doesn't really go away. It's not necessarily overwhelming sadness or visible distress. It's more like a dull, persistent numbness, a sense of just going through the motions, feeling disconnected from meaning or from purpose in life. People with high functioning depression often describe feeling off or flat, even when they're doing things that they used to enjoy. And it's not the same as just having a passing bad day. It's something that lingers and it becomes so familiar that it almost feels normal. And there's a big difference between the kind of sadness that comes and goes and the kind of chronic flatness that quietly just chips away and erodes your emotional experience over time. Another common feature of high functioning depression is perfectionism and chronic self criticism. This can be internal, like feeling like you're never doing enough, like no matter how much you accomplish, it's never good enough. Or it can come from external pressures, life expectations to appear successful, or to have it all together, or to be the one that other people rely on. Over time, this kind of mindset creates a loop where someone keeps pushing themselves harder to meet those standards, but never feels satisfied. And even small mistakes then get amplified. That internal pressure becomes a constant background noise, fueling the depression while making it harder to acknowledge or address it. Then there's anhedonia, which is a loss of interest or pleasure in things that used to matter. And this one's tricky because from the outside, people might still be doing those things. They might still be going to yoga class or playing music or meeting a friend for coffee. But the experience has changed. It feels more like checking a box rather than something that feeds them. I've had people describe it as showing up for something that they used to love, like gardening or playing with their dog, and then they feel nothing. The activity's still there, but the connection to it is gone. And that sense of emotional deadness can be really disorienting, especially when it's happening in areas of life that used to bring you joy. Another major sign of high functioning depression is persistent fatigue, even when someone's getting enough sleep. And this isn't just physical tiredness, it's psychological. It's that kind of exhaustion that doesn't lift after a nap or a good night's rest. It's that feeling of dragging yourself through the day, where everything takes more effort than it should. Sometimes people chalk it up to stress or being busy, and sure, that can be part of it. But when that kind of fatigue becomes chronic and feels out of proportion to the demands of life, it becomes worth paying attention to. High functioning depression also often shows up in the form of subtle and inconsistent changes to sleep and appetite. And this is different than the extreme insomnia or dramatic weight changes we often associate with major depressive disorder. This may be more inconsistent, having nights where you stay up way too late, then crash the next day, or skipping meals because you're not really hungry, then overeating at night to try and self-soothe. It might look like sleeping too much on weekends or being unable to wind down at night. And these fluctuations can be easy to overlook, but they can quietly chip away at someone's mental resilience over time. And finally, there's quiet social withdrawal. This one can be especially hard to spot because the person might still be going to events, still reply to messages, still physically be present, but there's a difference between being there and really being there. Someone might go to a birthday party and sit quietly on the edge of the room. They might keep texting in group chats, but stop making plans. They're showing up, but they feel detached or disengaged. This kind of presence without connection is common in people with high functioning depression. It's not like a dramatic exit from social life. It's more of a slow fading out, and it's easy to miss unless you're really looking for it. And what makes all of this more complicated is that people experiencing high functioning depression are often the last to realize what's going on because they're still doing what needs to be done. They're still achieving, they're still helping others, they're still checking all of the boxes. But inside, they're running on empty. And over time, that starts to take a toll, not just on mood, but on identity, on relationships, and on physical health. The thing to remember is just because someone is functioning doesn't mean they're okay. And just because someone isn't visibly struggling doesn't mean they aren't hurting. And if you want to learn more about ways of managing depression, I'd encourage you to check out this video. So that's all for today's video. As always, thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.